Hey guys, it's Kathleen, and today I'm finally doing my May wrap up. This was a really weird reading month for me. I'm not really sure why it happened, but it kind of did. So I read 6 books, and the second book I read this month was a biography, and that kind of just like spun me off on this biography trail that I went on for the rest of the month, which is a little strange given I never read biographies, but without further ado, let's just talk about the books I read. The first book I finished this month was Put In by Julie Murphy. This is a sequel to Dumplin', and it follows Millie, who is a character from the first book who you get to know a little bit, but not tons about. It's funny because when I read Dumplin', my Goodreads review actually just said, wow, I wish that Millie had been the protagonist of this book, and here we are. She has her own book, and it's a good thing. So Millie is also a fat main character, and she's proud of this fact, and she's gone to fat camp for years and years, but she really wants to go to broadcast journalism camp instead this year, and doesn't know how to tell her mother. She's also getting into a romance with a boy at school, and meanwhile, there's another girl named Callie, who's the other protagonist of this book, who gets into some trouble and ends up having to work at the place where Millie works, and the two form an unexpected friendship, and then like stuff happens. So this book, like everything else Julie Murphy has ever written, is extremely fluffy and sweet. Everything in these books radiate positivity, even though they do deal with tough issues and things like that. They're really just so, they feel like a baked good almost. That's so weird, but it's so true. They feel like a cookie. These books are a cookie. I'm not actually a huge fan of Dumplin'. I thought the plot moved very slowly in that one and was honestly really boring, and I didn't like the main character much. This one I did like more. I didn't think the plot dragged on the way it did in Dumplin', and I think there was just more of it unlike Dumplin', which could have probably been shortened by about 100 pages. I also really liked both the characters in this. I liked Callie a lot and how she grew and became a different person and went from being kind of a mean girl to being a better person overall. And I do like Millie, even though she's a little bit annoying almost in her positivity. She can drive you kind of insane, but I still think she's a good force of light in the world of YA fiction, so I'm not like mad she exists or anything. Honestly, one of the criticisms I have of this book is kind of a weird one, and I feel like people are gonna be like, Kathleen, that's a stupid criticism, but it's how I feel. Basically, Millie wants to be a broadcast journalist, and that's really cool. I love when there are journalists in books because that's what I study, and I find it really exciting. It's not something you see a lot. In this one, I think when it comes to journalism, I feel like Millie doesn't really want to be a journalist to be a journalist. Does that make sense? Interest seems to be being on TV, which is fine and everything. Like, she seemed to want to be an anchor, not really like out doing real journalism in the field. By the way, you don't get to be an anchor right away. It takes a long time to get up there. You can be a video journalist pretty easily, like a visual journalist, but being an anchor and being the one like at the desk does take a while. In that sense, this book wasn't that realistic. That doesn't mean I disliked the book. I did think it was fluffy and fun and enjoyable. Overall, I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. The second book I read this month was The Girl with 7 Names by Hae-Soon Lee. This is a book following a girl who was born in North Korea. It's a true story, obviously, and it follows her childhood in North Korea and her eventual escape. What really makes this story different, though, from other memoirs about North Korea is that Lee didn't intend to leave North Korea permanently. She's from a family who had a fairly high social status, and they did have money, so they weren't starving, so she didn't escape for food like many other people have. I won't tell you specifically why she left because you should definitely read the book, but that's something that definitely makes her story different from other people's. Is such a good memoir. There's so much detail, and it really provided a different perspective on North Korea in a way I'd never seen before in a book. I think oftentimes we talk about the prison camps, but we don't talk about the normal people who live there. It's really important to see that. It's also very gripping. There's a lot of cliffhangers in it throughout, but it's just really good. I just enjoyed this a lot, and this is what got me into reading memoirs and biographies throughout this month. I learned so much from this book. I would highly recommend it if you want to learn about different cultures and a different part of the world and about the horrible situation that's still going on there. So yeah, I don't have much more to say about it, but I loved this book and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The third book I read this month was Without You, There Is No Us by Suki Kim. This is another book about North Korea. You're probably gonna sense a theme this month. This book follows a woman who disguised herself as a Christian missionary teacher and went to teach in Pyongyang to teach the rich elite sons of North Koreans, essentially most elite people. If you want to get a sense of people who were raised believing that the Kim family are the greatest people on earth, then definitely read this book because it really gives you a sense of that. Because it shows these elite people raised in the capital, then you really get a sense of that mindset. I don't think this book is bad. It's a little short. I did enjoy it. It was definitely informative. The only thing I can really say about it is that the author of the book did a TED Talk, which is extremely moving, and I'm going to link it because it's really good, and honestly, you could probably watch the TED Talk instead of reading this book. But it was still good, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The fourth book I finished this month was Escape from Camp 14 by Blaine Harden. This book follows a man who was born and raised in Camp 14, which is one of North Korea's most awful concentration detention camps. Horrible, horrible things happen there, and you get a really, really vivid description when you read this book. It's definitely good. It follows him from his childhood into his adulthood as he escapes and eventually enters China and later moves to South Korea and then the US for a bit. The only thing, of course, that you have to remember when reading this book is this little bit here where it says new forward. If you're wondering what that's all about, essentially the subject of this book did retract some of the things he originally said that were published in this book. The book was not rewritten with this information, but they did provide a foreword to give you context. Some of the things he said weren't true. He was born in Camp 14, but was transferred for quite a while to a different camp, and then was likely eventually sent back to Camp 14. He lied about his role in the death of his mother and brother. He also lied about the dates and reasons he was tortured. Now, none of that means this book isn't worth reading or that it's bad. In fact, I think it's definitely worth reading. It's definitely a really important look at North Korea concentration camps, and it's a reminder of the fact that these horrors do still exist today. So if you can keep all that in mind, this actually is a really, really good book, and I do recommend it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The 5th book I finished this month was not about North Korea, but it was a biography, and that is Educated by Tara Westover. The book is obviously about Tara Westover, and it's her memoir of her family, essentially. So she grew up in the mountains of Idaho to survivalist parents who stocked things up. They were fundamentalist Mormons who had strange beliefs that most of their Mormon church did not believe in. A Fruit of the Loom shirt from Walmart, for instance, was considered too skimpy by her father. Pulled her and her siblings out of public school and taught them that public school was a bad thing and the state was bad, and they were never allowed to go to hospitals even. So this book follows Tara as she grows up in this family, also dealing with an abusive brother whose abusive tendencies get worse when he gets into an accident, and then eventually as she passes the tests to get into university and goes there without telling anybody that she's never attended high school, and then her life afterwards as she eventually goes on to get her PhD and becomes educated herself. I absolutely loved this book. Such a good depiction of what education is and what education means for people, but mostly it's about a woman and the education she gives herself. Tara Westover's writing is also beautiful. She's a great, great writer. She's very descriptive. She's very, very good at building the characters of these people, and I just think this is a great book, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Next and final book I read, I technically finished June 1st, but I'm not carrying this into another wrap-up, so here it is, and it's Two Steps Forward by Graham Simpson and Annie Bust, and I hate this book. I have strong feelings about this book. Basically, this is about two people, Zoe and Martin, who decide they're going to hike the Camino in France and into Italy. There are these two middle-aged people who are dealing with their life crises and stuff. Zoe's husband died before and she has regrets over that and blames herself. And then Martin has gone through a divorce because his wife cheated on him and he feels distant from his daughter. Who, what a compelling story. So basically these people go through the Camino and they meet different, interesting characters along the way. Interesting, they're not really interesting, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, this is so interesting, I'm learning so much about myself, my whole life is so changed. And then like there's some stupid romance between them where they like kind of fall in love, but they have this thing whereas they're getting to know each other, whenever someone gets like a surprising revelation or something happens that's not so good, instead of telling the other person and just like informing them, they just leave. Or just like pack up their stuff and go and don't tell the other person, they keep hiking, and then they have to wait for the other person to find them, and it's so stupid, and they do this multiple times in this book. Why did Graham Simpson have to fall so far? I mean, if you've read The Rosie Project, which was one of his other books, it is so, so good. It's really well done. It's really funny. This book wouldn't know humor if it kicked itself in the face, and it just doesn't even try to make it interesting. It's boring. It's pointless. Don't read it. I give it 2 out of 5 stars. That is it for the books that I read this month. I would love to hear what you guys read this month and what your thoughts are on any of these books if you have them. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe on your way out if you are new here. Videos generally on Tuesdays and Fridays. This video won't be going up on a Tuesday or a Friday because clearly I'm a success. Follow me on any of my social medias. The links will all be in the description. But in the meantime, I'll see you guys next time.